So I'm going to do a quick case study here of this classroom that we did at Grace College in Winona Lake, Indiana. The classroom itself that we're going to talk about is actually shown here. It's that circular structure that's on the front of the building there. And we talked about concave surfaces and how that's a challenge. And this one was a big challenge.
Yeah.
We got brought in after the fact. So the building was built, and then as it was being built, people started to notice this doesn't sound good, and so we got involved to try to figure out how to improve it. So we went on site and did testing. This photograph is actually from where I was doing my testing. You see the microphone there and the portable loudspeaker that we brought in. But the idea for this room was a classroom in the round where the professor would be in the center of the room talking to the students that are sitting around them. And in theory, that's a great idea. It's like it gets more interaction and just a different environment where people can try to focus in on what the professor's saying. However, in practice, it just caused a lot of problems.
Right.
So with this circular environment, it caused focusing, like that concave diagram that I showed before, at focusing to the center of the radius of curvature. Well, the center of the radius of curvature is the center of the room, which is where that professor was speaking, right? And I remember when I was there the first day, I stood in the center and I spoke like I was trying to address a class, and it sounded like there was 50 of me talking. And it's just so focused that it almost sounds like it's just inside your head rather than hitting your ears. It's like it's pretty a wild experience, and it's something where that's, I'm sure, what professors were experiencing. That's why we got a call, because it just was not a pleasing listening environment at all. So here's a top-down view of the room. They did plan on some acoustical ceiling tiles in the ceiling, but all the walls were all drywall, and just a challenging space. So we did some testing. We focused on impulse responses, reverb time, STI measurements, and really tried to dial in what the problem was. It wasn't too hard to figure out because the problem was the room was circular, and that's causing issues. Looking at the impulse response, this is something where you don't typically see the impulse response looking like this. This is an example of focusing and flutter echo that's occurring in the space, because you see the rhythmic peaks of the reflections coming back to the microphone after the direct sound got cut off, but you see all these spikes that are happening, and you can see that the distance between them is the same all the time, because this microphone was placed in the center of the room, and the time for it to come back to it was always equal, except it just kept bouncing back and forth and focusing in on this room. So this is what the impulse response looked like before we did treatment in the room, and then the next slide here is after treatment. And notice how that phenomenon is pretty much almost gone. You can see a little bit of that still happening, but it's not as great as it was before, and the amplitude isn't as loud. So I'm going to show what we did to solve that. The key here was to use this product from Acoustical Fulfillment called wedge panels. And wedge panels, they make these panels that are an inch thick on one side and 3 inches thick on the other side. So it creates an angled front face of the panel. Because strangely enough, if you were to put just flat-faced acoustical panels on that curved wall, the problem would not go away, because the angle of incidence directly into a panel, there's a reflected component that comes back off of a flat panel. But if you angle that, like these wedge panels naturally do on their own, while still being easy to hang on the walls, it just really breaks out that focusing issue, breaks it up, and doesn't cause a problem anymore, while also reducing reverb time. So this next photo that I'm showing shows you kind of how that wedge panel looks. You see the thin section, it slopes up to a thicker section, and so the front face is always angled. And now you could do it with flat-faced panels, just normal acoustical panels, but you'd have to mount them on the wall with the angle built in, and that's sometimes hard to do. You got to do like wood blocking and create the angle yourself, whereas the wedge panels do it for you. So this was the goal, and in fact we started with panels just circling the entire room where there was no airspace in between them. But we ended up removing every other one because of budget concerns, but the spacing of it was done so that if they ever wanted to go back and add in those panels that were in the void, they could do that and not have to reposition any of the existing panels. But turned out that just half of the panels were enough to make the difference for them. We took reverb time measurements before and after, and in some cases it was up to 73% reduction at 1,000 hertz there. It was 1.76 seconds of reverb before treatment and 0.47 after. And it really wasn't a ton of treatment. Mm-hmm. Like it really, sometimes if placed correctly and choosing the right treatments, you can really make a great result. Next thing here is the reverb time study. The red line is the reverb time of the room before treatment was done, and the green line was after treatment was completed. So you see that big boost of reverb time at 1,000, 2,000, and 4,000. It's now well within acceptable limits and right on that target line that we were shooting for. Yeah. And this is a picture of it completed, and you got a professor there standing in the center addressing their students. They have like these mobile desks to be able to move around, and just ended up working for them, even though, it was something that had to be done after the fact. And I think aesthetically, the room still looks like it was meant to be that way.
Yeah.